What is going on, everybody? Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and welcome back to my series where I give you my takes on every single team for this upcoming NHL season of 2021-2022. As we weigh in on the closing stretches of me covering the Pacific Division, today's video we're going to be talking about the Vancouver Canucks. So when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks, this is a team that is very young, very skilled, and has a ton of potential and a bright future moving forward. Now, coming into last season, I think a lot of people had some false expectations about this team. Considering how well they played in the bubble in 2020, I think a lot of people thought that maybe they'd finish a lot better than where they did last year. But given the bad offseason they had, a clear regression should have been expected, and of course, that's exactly what happened. So diving deeper in what exactly transpired last season, they finished with a 23-29-4 record for a total of 50 points and finished dead last in the North Division. Now, although I didn't pick them to make the playoffs last year, they definitely were a lot worse than I thought. Looking at their offensive numbers, they averaged a 2.64 goals for per game, which ranked 24th in the NHL, and a 17.4% power play percentage, which ranked 25th in the NHL. So the offense clearly took a step back. And then looking at their defense, absolutely atrocious. 3.34 goals against per game, which ranked 26th, and a 79.8% penalty kill percentage, which was mediocre, tied for 17th. The reason why it appeared their defense had glaring holes is because the loss of Jacob Markstrom. You can really tell he carried that team and that terrible blue line, but now that he was gone, there was really nobody in his place that could fill his role in goal. Taking a look at the top 5 scorers from last season, the leading scorer was Brock Boeser with 23 goals and 26 assists for 49 points in 56 games. Boeser did have a pretty good year, all things considered, and he's still considered one of the best young goal scorers in the NHL. Then in second, JT Miller with 15 goals, 31 assists for 46 points in 53 games. Miller is honestly a very solid, consistent winger, but apart from those two guys, there wasn't a ton of support. Third, we got Quinn Hughes, who played 56 games with 3 goals and 38 assists for 41 points. Quinn Hughes, as we know, is still a very young and up-and-coming offensive defenseman, but he had a terrible defensive year. And fourth, we had Bo Horvat with 19 goals, 20 assists for 39 points. Horvat did all right. As we know, he's a second line center and he's not really an elite offensive talent, but I think he did all right. Then fifth, we actually have the rookie Niels Honglander, who had a pretty decent rookie season, 13 goals, 14 assists for 27 points. He's definitely an underrated piece that might have a major impact on this Canucks team moving forward. And then we got the starting goaltender from last season, which became Thatcher Demko with 35 games. He had a 16-18-1 record with the 2.85 goals against average and a 915 save percentage. Going into last year, I was very skeptical about the tandem of Thatcher Demko and Braden Holtby, but Demko did manage to have a very solid second half of the year, and he did finish with a 915 save percentage in front of an atrocious Canucks defense. So honestly, he didn't play that bad as the year went on. So yeah, you could make the argument that this team definitely underachieved last year, but I didn't have super high expectations considering how much of a step back they took in the offseason. Now, in terms of where they might finish this season, I feel like there's a lot more optimism going forward here. So with that said, my expectations are much higher than they were last season. We'll break down all the offseason moves, but I definitely think this is a very improved roster, and there's definitely some legitimate expectation for this team to take the next step and finally make the playoffs in that Pacific Division. Taking a look at their offseason additions, they added some major pieces, one being Connor Garland, who played really well on a terrible Coyotes team. He's going to fill in very well in a top 6 role on a stacked offense in Vancouver. And they also added some pretty solid defense, Oliver Ekman-Larsson from the Coyotes as well. Obviously, OEL was kind of being run down in Arizona, but now in a fresh start with Vancouver, it should be a very nice situation for him to get a clean slate and really start over on a young and up-and-coming Canucks team. And they also added Tucker Poolman, who I think is a decent signing. They might have overpaid for him a little bit, but I still think he could be a very serviceable third-pair guy, maybe be in a top 4. And with Braden Holtby gone, they had to address their backup goaltending position, so they added Jaroslav Halak. Obviously, he's a lot older, and he's probably past his prime now, but I think in a backup role, it might be a pretty good opportunity for him to really show that he's still got it and still a really good goaltender in this league. Although it might be tough transitioning from the great defensive team that was the Boston Bruins, going to this more mediocre, lackluster defense on Vancouver. But if that defense does manage to improve, which I would expect, I think Halak might be still in a pretty decent situation here. In terms of what they lost, yeah, they lost Braden Holtby, only played 1 year with Vancouver, but he was not good, so whatever, let him walk. They also traded away Nate Schmidt, who kind of had a rough season with Vancouver. Again, another one and done guy. And they also lost Alex Edler, who was a big time vet for this team, and I'm sure that his leadership and his presence will be sorely missed. But in terms of Edler, the hockey player, clearly past his prime. Not really a significant loss in terms of what you got on the ice from Edler at this point of his career, but overall this team definitely improved. They improved their defense, they improved their depth scoring with Connor Garland. I also think their goaltending tandem now with Thatcher Demko and an experienced Jaroslav Halak backing him up is going to be pretty solid. So overall, I think the Canucks had one of the better off seasons in comparison to the rest of the league. Now taking a look at who I think are going to be the top 5 scorers for the Canucks entering this year. First I have Elias Pettersson. I mean, he had a rough season, but we all know he's a young, very dynamic, skilled center, and he's going to be a problem for years to come in this league. If healthy, I fully expect him to bounce back, and I would not be surprised in the slightest if he finished with over a point per game. So I do have him scoring 32 goals and adding 53 assists for 85 points. He's always been on the cusp of over a point per game over his first couple of years in the league, but I think this is the year where he finally emerges, especially with even more offensive talent around him. This definitely should be a year where he takes another step in his development. And second, I got JT Miller scoring 26 goals and 44 assists for 70 points. JT Miller's definitely broken out ever since he's arrived in Vancouver. He seems to be a perfect fit here, and you can definitely expect 70 points from him. He's done it in the past. And third, I got Brock Besser scoring 37 goals, which would lead the team, as well as 30 assists for 67 points. Besser's extremely young. He's got amazing goal scoring upside, and playing with playmakers like Miller and Pettersson, who are very elite at what they do, Besser should find the back of the net a ton this year. Guaranteed. And in fourth, I got the newly acquired Connor Garland, whose name I misspelled. But anyway, I got him finishing with 28 goals and 34 assists for 62 points. Honestly, I thought he played pretty well in the Coyotes, but now he's in a situation with a very stacked offensive team in Vancouver, and I feel like he should easily break 60 points. He might even break more. For now, I think relatively these are pretty fair expectations for Garland this season. And in fifth, I have Quinn Hughes scoring 6 goals and 55 assists for 61 points. Obviously, elite offensive defenseman, still very, very young. He's going to be feeding the puck a lot to these forwards. That's why I have him leading the team in assists. You can question his defensive game, but as an offensive defenseman, you know that you're going to expect a lot of points from him, and that's what I expect this season. He probably should get above 60 points. All right, so it's time for me to tell you what I think I expect from this team this upcoming season. So yeah, I look at this team, like I said before, very much improved. I really like the offseason additions they made. Definitely a young and up-and-coming team that's trending in the right direction. And there's definitely opportunity for this team to be a top 3 team in the Pacific Division. So with that, I have them finishing third in the Pacific Division with a 42, 32, and 8 record for a total of 92 points. And if you're a top 3 team in the Pacific, you will make the playoffs, and I think they will return to the playoffs. Honestly, this is purely based on the talent they have. They're a very young team. I like their forward group. I think it's really solid. Might be a top 10 offensive team in the league. I look at the defense. Maybe it's still not amazing. It's still not perfect, but I definitely think the acquisitions of Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Tucker Poolman greatly improved their defense. And then also the upward development of Thatcher Demko, who had an amazing second half last year. I think he's convinced me at this point that he could be a #1 goaltender in this league, and a pretty damn good one at that. And then of course, adding Halak as the backup to really give this team experience and mentor Demko. I think it's a pretty decent tandem, and I think they can get by with it, especially in a weak Pacific Division. I would expect this team to have a big season and at least make the playoffs. Now obviously, 92 points is kind of just mediocre-ish, barely in a playoff spot, but I feel like it's enough to get in, especially in the weak Pacific Division. That's going to do it with my season expectations on the Vancouver Canucks. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think your expectations are for this team. Do you think they have what it takes to take another step in the right direction and make the playoffs like I do? Or do you think it's a team still finding themselves, still kind of transitioning, and they're going to struggle a little bit and be a little bit mediocre and maybe not make the playoffs? Let me know your guys' thoughts. Thank you so much for watching this video. Click like if you liked it. Please consider subscribing to my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. See you guys later.